everyone, my name is Monica Brown and I will be presenting on the topic of starvation. To start us off, I will read a quote from a book called Enough by Roger Thoreau and Scott Kilman. A tiny girl stumbled through a field of rocks towards a group of international aid workers. She was barefoot and limping. Flies dotted her face, craving the moisture of her eyes, lips, and nostrils. A shabby gray dress smudged with dirt hung limply from her shoulders. Though she was no more than 8 years old, she carried her baby sister on her back, a turquoise blanket binding them together. Without speaking, for that would have required too much energy, the girl weakly stretched out her arms, one hand supporting the other. Her dark, frightened eyes were desperate. Please, they beseeched, something to eat, anything at all. In a famine, the starving speak with their eyes. This issue that Roger and Scott illuminate to us is all too real. They went down to Ethiopia to witness the famine that was going on down there and really firsthand see the horrors that were happening in the international aid tents. The amount of hungry kids and crying mothers in there was heartbreaking, and really the only answer that they could give to them was food, and there just physically was not enough food to go around. Starvation is a very large issue on our planet. Last year, it affected 795 million people, which works out to be about 1 in 8 or 1 in 9 people suffering from malnourishment or starvation. The majority of these come from developing nations, where anywhere between 20% up to 33% of a nation's total population can be hungry or malnourished. Almost half of all child deaths come from starvation or malnourishment, and the vast majority of people who are hungry right now are children. Starvation occurs for a myriad of reasons, the most prevalent one being poverty. I think World Food Program puts it eloquently when they say the poor are hungry and their hunger traps them in poverty. When people physically don't have enough money to afford food, their capacity to do work lowers, and so when they do go to work and make money, they make less, which cycles around and prevents them from buying more food. Another big issue are agricultural resources and climate. A lot of developing nations physically lack the infrastructure, the irrigation systems, the roads, and the reliable water sources that they need in order to produce a yield every year. So they fully depend on the weather and the rainfall to irrigate their crops. And when drought or floods happen, it prevents them from producing what they need. Another large contribution to starvation is actually from war. A lot of conflicting nations will use destroying food and livestock systems as a war tactic in order to starve their opposing nations. And finally, food waste is also a very large issue that really hits home for me. About a third of all of our food produced, which equals about 1.3 billion tons of food, is wasted either before it hits the plate or after it hits the plate. This issue is important and prevalent to all of us because we are all humans and we all have the basic right to food. None of us should ever question if we will have enough to eat in order to continue living. And so this issue applies across the board, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your experiences are. We can all help solve this. Realistically, what we can do is to ultimately apply better farming practices and to help nations gain the proper infrastructure that they need in order to produce reliably each year. I don't suggest supporting food packing industries like Feed My Starving Children or international aid because they are quick fixes in emergencies. They're not a long-term solution. It would be the equivalent of me living on a lake and every week I give my neighbor a fish versus just taking him out on the lake and teaching him to fish himself to be self-sufficient. He wouldn't have to rely on me in order to feed himself. If this issue is not solved, it will only continue to get worse because of climate change. With the rise of temperatures and the rising of oceans, our storms and our droughts will get worse. So overall, we will have a smaller amount of farmable land, which will therefore decrease our overall yields that we produce. So if we don't fix this now, it will just spiral and get out of control. We as CFAN students, I truly believe, have the advantage to solve this issue because we are all already interested in food, agriculture, and natural sciences. So realistically, we can have the opportunity to do research within our university or to volunteer abroad and or locally and to teach about food knowledge. We have the opportunity to study abroad and do a hands-on internship to actively end this. And we can also get involved with it in our career. I truly think that no matter what major you are, this issue applies to you, whether you are in food systems or nutrition or environmental sustainability or economics, whatever. It all ties in and you have the ability to help. This may seem like a very large action step to dedicate a portion of your life to this, but it's a very large issue that needs to be solved, and so large action steps need to be taken. I myself am biased because this personally is what I want to do with my life. I feel like I've been called to feed people, and so this is what I intend to do with my food systems major. Ultimately, I know all of us have heard about starvation our entire lives and what an issue that it is. I truly think just action needs to be taken at this point. It is a solvable issue. I stand up here 100% certain that this issue can end if the right actions are taken. And so I will leave you with a quote from John F. Kennedy saying, "There are risks and costs to action, but they are far less than the long-range risks of comfortable inaction." Thank you.